And vegans, I don't know if there's any vegans in here with enough strength to raise your hand. Is there one? Was that her? Was that someone calling out for meat? I'm envious of vegans. If you can do it, good for you. I ain't about that life. I've had one vegan experience. It did not go well. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm walking down the street. I pass a bakery with all these beautiful things in the window. So I just kind of poke my head in and I go, "Excuse me, ma'am, what are those on the bottom?" She says, "That's a root beer float donut. And it just came out of the oven about 20 minutes ago. Do you want one?" I was like, "No, I want two." But only put one in the bag because the other one ain't making it out of this store. So she hands me the one over the counter. I take a bite as we walk to the register, and I was like, no. She's like, "Sir, did you know this is a vegan bakery?" I was like, "Nope." And she's like, "Yep, that's what I figured." She goes, "See this sign right here? It says no product contains an ingredient that comes from an animal." And I was like, "Well, that's ironic, because this is some bullshit." No, listen, I didn't say it. I didn't say it, but I should have, because she deserved to hear it. And you do deserve to hear it. She should have known when I came through that door that I was in the wrong place. Look at me. Look at me. I guarantee I don't look like any of her regulars, okay? And I would have had a lot more respect for her if she would have been like, "Sir, I think you might want the place down the street. Of everything you're looking for. Milk, eggs, butter, taste. Right down the street. Just, yeah. I don't know. Maybe 2 blocks. I'm sure you'll call an Uber. You can wait in here. I know. It's at least 70 degrees with no humidity outside. I wouldn't want you melting."
That would be the house guest.
Hi.
Literally inside the house
Inside
this time.
the
We had
house.
hoped to be outside where we normally are, but this has been the first rain in like a month, so
Yes.
we're inside and it's all good. He would be Josh Sneed.
I like that I could be the special guest, but I could be on screen and people still have to wait for you to tell them my name. If Marty Brennaman was standing here, you'd have to cut him out so it's a surprise. I can be right on camera and people be like, "Who is that?"
Well, but people always say a man who needs no introduction, and then they introduce him anyway.
Right.
So you are a man who does need an
I
introduction.
for sure do.
And we forgot to do it. So there he is, Josh Sneed.
Now, hang on. We must make sure people know about Josh Sneed.
Yeah, we got to
right?
get.
Besides-
Let's move off of the schneid.
Let's get. So
and get to the
basically,
point.
comedian, proprietor of Cincy Shirts, right?
That's right.
Big time Reds fan.
Huge.
Are you a Cincinnati sports fan or predominantly just Reds?
Cincinnati sports fan in general. The Reds I probably follow
Okay.
more than anything else.
And you've got kind of the basement shrine to the Red Legs, correct?
mini museum. That's
okay,
right.
and you were involved with the How We Lookin', the Marty movie, right?
I was
Among other
one of the
projects?
producers on the movie.
Well, that's the last time we
yeah.
saw you.
Right,
That's,
we did.
oh, that's right.
Right,
Yeah.
You sit down out at Starlight, and since then the movie's come out at the Esquire, been held over another week.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
cool.
This week is so people have 2 more nights. This Friday will be the last night. They can check it out at the Esquire, and after that, we're trying to sell it to see who wants to pick it up.
Do you think it'll get picked? I mean, I know there have been, like Pete Rose stuff and other sports movies have essentially been. Do you think this one has what it takes to get picked up?
I do. I think that even if it was just Fox Sports Ohio or one of the local stations, I think someone's going to show it here locally. But the love that we've gotten on our Facebook page of people just saying like, can I get it on Amazon? Can I buy it on iTunes? Right. At the very least, it'll be on some type of streaming service for people to rent or purchase.
Well, and I'm kind of waiting because he and I both, we hosted the show, and then for whatever reason, we both had to leave because the band played.
Yep.
Then you had Q&A, and right when you were getting ready to go with the Q&A before it got dark, I had to go because I had to get home to the dog. He had to teach a class next morning, so we haven't even had a chance
We're just pitiful
Yeah.
is
to
what
see
comes
it
down
yet.
to.
But I'm kind of interested because I wanted to see what sort of impact it had and then see it after I'd gotten some different reaction. But I do have a question about it because we all know what happened the very next day.
yeah, 48
and
hours. Yeah, 48 hours.
Basically,
Yeah.
48 hours later that involved the Brennaman family.
Yes.
Was there any sort of re-edit? Was there any sort of anything that had to be done to change up any of the content or the edit to take care of anything in there?
No, and I don't think we would.
Good for you guys.
No one is going to condone what was said and what happened. And I think that everything that's happened since just speaking as like a fan and somewhat of a friend, I think everything's had the appropriate response to it.
Agreed.
But in terms of telling Marty's story, I mean, you can't tell Marty's story without him.
Correct.
As a son and as a colleague, and so I just don't think we would ever take it out of the movie for that reason.
I know you and Terry, are working to try to get it picked up. What do you think it takes? I mean, obviously you've been involved in comedy and going around and traveling and doing shows. This is a little different, presumably, getting a network to pay. What's the hook? Because I mean, Pete Rose had a national hook if you're a baseball fan, and Marty Brennaman, to people like us who grew up for those 40 plus years listening to him. I get it here. What's the hook there?
I think even outside of here, for better or for worse, he's a name people recognize that are baseball fans. I think ESPN would probably be a tougher sell than MLB, because I do think that someone who's watching MLB Network would be familiar, not just with him, but with the calls that we share throughout the movie of, like, there are some pretty iconic moments in baseball. Yeah. And some of those are even outside of Cincinnati,
No question.
Hank Aaron's home run, calling the shot of Leitner beating UK in the regionals. 500 and 600, So, in that regard, I think an average baseball fan will enjoy it. Ultimately, I think Fox Sports Ohio makes the most sense, because you're just like tapping right into that vein. And then after that, you've got the different distribution methods where we can actually just strictly target Reds fans.
Well, and again, Josh Sneed is our guest, a longtime friend. I mean, we've known one another. I mean, all of us combined probably 20 plus years since we were fledglings doing whatever it was we were doing when we were getting started. But I mean, I met you as a stand-up comedian before you had, I think, even before
in Atlanta
Shirts. Yeah, and it was in Atlanta. That's what the craziest thing to me is. When I worked down at 96 Rock in Atlanta is where we actually met.
I know you.
Yeah, you're that guy from that place. And I'm like, wait, you're that guy from that other place.
Well, side story for me, his wife, Jenny, was literally one of my best students. I taught at NKU from 2002 to 2012. And I still remember this because she did a project and they had to present it in front of the class. And I brought in some industry folks to observe, and the one guy wrote comments about her presentation was better than a lot that I see in industry, and you knew she had that. I mean, she went on to work in the dean's office at NKU, so
she was a SID up
correct.
at Dayton.
Oh, that's right. She was up with Doug Houschild's staff up there.
Oh, and up to a certain point was known as a very good decision maker.
He is very quick to point out that I have outkicked my coverage.
Oh yeah, well, come on, we both have it, right?
Yeah,
for sure. I think when you've done that, you kind of hang with somebody else who does it as well. So
Well, it's funny because all of the different things that we've collectively done, and now and we'll get to Cincy Shirts and the fun and the creativity that comes with that, your podcast, and that we've done. But the stand-up comedy was always, just a hard scrabble way to go. I always thought it would be something that I would love to try to do, but I'm two problems as I'm not funny, and I don't have the patience to do it.
But you are funny, but I think it's different. I mean, I think, and people have even said to me, like, listen to me on the radio, well, you ought to try. I'm like, no, dude, you don't get it.
Right.
Like, we can react and we can talk about stuff, and I think some people are amused. To me, getting up and just doing that monologue is completely different.
I mean, it just, over time, it just comes with, practice. That's all it is. But you guys have the hardest part out of the way, which is the ability to speak in public, and into a microphone and understand how to,
Yeah. Now, so like when did you do the, doing your act in front of the mirror and just seeing your reaction to what you look like doing it, or what kind of, because you don't put on, when you do your, and I've seen a lot of your video on Dry Bar comedy, and those get, views through the roof because it tends to be a cleaner, family friendly kind of comedy, but you're just doing you, and that's what I like. I'm watching you going, he's not doing a character, he's just doing him.
But I think that's why this most recent special has resonated, is because I'm talking about things that people can relate to, because I also am married with kids living in the Midwest. You know what I mean? So the stuff that I'm writing on, my life experiences, are very much relatable to the audiences that I'm playing. It's not like I'm LA or New York coming in trying to pretend like, hey, I'm one of you guys.
Yeah, right.
And to be honest with you, I don't see talk radio, what we do and what we do with our that's kind of what we do too. I mean, you just relate to, people who are in our audience presumably are going through what all of us go through every day. And I think that's, when people can go, oh man, that same thing happened to me, that's when you're relatable.
Well, think about it. This past Monday night on Larger Than Live and closed very much like these, that's exactly what we did. We talked about things like getting older. And, last week we had my daughter on WLW with us because she's a freshman at a major university right now, not getting the freshman experience.
Right.
And so we talked with her. And I think you're right. If you can key in and just hit some of those hot points with people, then that's where their life is. I think, why wouldn't you?
And I think that goes right back to what we were talking about, why people loved Marty Brennaman so much and why he resonated so much, is because people always felt like he was saying what they felt. It wasn't a guy that's just telling you what's going on in the field. He's giving opinions and insights that were very similar to what they were thinking. And I think that's why people loved Marty and Joe so much, is because they were like, he's one of us, and that's what I try to do as a comedian. I know that's what you guys try to do as hosts.
Well, for me with Marty is what I can't stand today, and I'm not going to name names. You can figure it out if you watch any of it. I don't need blowhards. I don't need that. I want somebody to tell me when some dude's hitting below 200 and is being paid multi-millions of dollars and or can't get anybody out. I want to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to make it, in the Reds, they're hitting line drives and the other team's blooping. Come on, man. We're watching the game. We're not buffoons.
Yeah. Right.
Just call it like it is, and that's what Marty Brennaman did.
And in the movie, people, like the players, both Bronson and Tom Browning, said, we respect him because if he said it, the next day he was in the locker room, and if you had a problem, you could go talk. You might not agree with him, but he didn't go hide after he said it. They understood that there was that he was doing his job, but he was also like, if you need to say something to me, I'm standing right here.
Yeah.
Well, and something else too, and this is something I think everybody can learn a lesson from, is he made the people that worked with him better. And my prime example of that is when the Cowboy first came on. I thought he was god awful as an announcer, but as you got to know him a little bit more,
not as an analyst, he wasn't very good as a point. He did the innings of play-by-play.
He didn't have the cadence, and it just drove me nuts. I'm like, that guy's getting a gig or whatever. But I knew it was going to take some time. But then you started to, you knew how many scoops of ice cream he ate, and that was the Marty influence.
In that big boy cup.
Yeah, but see, that was Marty going, say that. Go ahead. If you want to talk about that, talk about it. And I think having the comfort level to do that with a partner makes you better. And now you hear the Cowboy makes the people he's working with better because he brings them in. Honestly, Jim Day, I've seen cardboard cutouts in the stands that have, to me, more appeal specifically than he did when he first started. But he has gotten better, I think, working with some of those guys as well. But he's a very straight announcer-y
He's not a play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
They've put him in a role that he's more suited for what he was doing in the dugout and commiserating with the players and getting you behind-the-scenes stories. Play-by-play is distinctly different. You either a play-by-play guy, honestly, or you're not.
Yeah, but again, in the movie, you see it. Joe was that for Marty. Mm-hmm. Marty was that for Jeff, and now Jeff is that guy for Tommy.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, let's get back to it. And again, Josh Sneed, you can find all of his information. He's pretty much at Josh Sneed on all the social platforms.
Which is smart.
You'll find him.
And let's give our trade secret away too.
Yeah. Well, you want to go ahead and tell it?
Well, yeah, because we're gonna talk about the Reds being in the postseason because he's a huge Reds fan. So we have to address the fact that you're viewing this, right?
Well, yeah, you're viewing it on Wednesday at 7, but we recorded this in February. So actually, this is very insightful for having shot this far back.
I heard there is a flu coming that you guys aren't going to believe.
Second wave.
Really? Yep. Oh, no, the first wave. See, remember, it's February, you see.
Right.
Anyway, we shot this on Monday.
And it didn't start here, correct? It started somewhere else?
Allegedly.
Okay, but
we shot this on Monday, so there you go.
But the Reds play today or Wednesday. So I'm even confusing what the hell day it is now, for God's sake. Right? So the Reds played Wednesday afternoon.
They played
early.
today.
They played today.
If you're watching this, they played
Right,
today.
They play in 2 days in the day before this airs.
That's
but,
right.
Bottom line is they play Atlanta, and you know
They either looked really good or terrible or
didn't.
somewhere in
Yes,
between.
they did. But this is such an interesting 60-game sprint. I mean, 4 of the 5 teams in the NL Central are in the postseason,
Yeah.
which tells you honestly
Oh, come
how
on.
diluted this year is. Now you don't have to apologize for that if you're the
I think
Reds.
it tells you how good that the other teams are because the Dodgers dominated the division and
Well-
the Braves had a pretty sizable lead too. But the Marlins are in, but
If you want to be honest about it, there's 4 teams in the National League, and I love the Reds dearly like you. There's 4 teams that ought to be in the postseason. L.A., Atlanta, the Cubs, the Padres. I mean, I know there will be a second wild card, but those are the teams based on their performance and record that ought to be in. A game or 2 over 500 or under 500, in my opinion. It's like the NBA and NHL, and I thought Marty made an interesting point when he was on with us last Thursday about how he thinks that they will expand the baseball playoffs, after what's occurred this year, and he thought it was. He said, "Hey, I'm a purist, but I think it's good for the game." Now
too.
you think the Reds, and I'm not saying I'm thrilled that the Reds are in, but I mean, I guess I'm just somebody who if you take Pittsburgh out of the mix from the victories, and you don't, but if you do, I don't know. I think these Reds team is dangerous, but I also think they I don't know.
I think they're built for a series.
I would give you
against
that.
the team. I also feel like the baseball they're playing lately is probably closer to what people expected them to play.
I would agree
So
with
if you play that out over 162 games, then you're talking 9-10 games over 500,
Well,
which
yeah.
is probably still going
That
to put you
I
in the
agree with.
playoffs.
I think they got off to a bad start. I mean, at one point they were 18-24. I would agree, and we've even said that. If they had played 102 more games, I think they would have rounded into the form that everybody expected, including the management team when they signed these guys.
Yeah, it would have just been a question of would they hold up on the injury front because they
someone watch
certainly
the dog?
are not able to.
I am.
They can't afford to lose anybody of the players that they do have.
Well, and part of what we talked about too with Marty is, I mean, you knew this was a sprint.
Dog is loose.
Was there some overmanagement of the pitching in the first couple of series, few series, whatever, when they could have had it done, and there was just some what appeared to be some nonsense going on, whatever. But it is what it is. But like you said, by the time the show runs, we'll have a much better idea of where the Reds stand. Again, as a lifelong Reds fan myself, who admittedly kind of dipped out there in the '90s. It's exciting to see it happen.
it's exciting to care about baseball
Right. No,
in
you're correct.
October.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Now, I want to get back to the stand-up comedy stuff because, and I don't want to rub salt in the wound, but you just had a Holy Grail style moment yanked out from under you. And, I mean, you've had some great gigs with some great, other comedians, but man, oh man, this one, what
This whole year,
what
honestly,
would this have
man.
been like? Well, yeah, true.
Well, in March, I was booked to headline the MGM Grand in Vegas for the first time.
What?
So
that would have been awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, every comic's dream is to headline in Vegas
sure.
and see your name and photo on the marquee of the MGM Grand. So I was booked there, and then I was going to be flying from there to Augusta because I won in the Masters lottery. I won Tuesday practice round tickets. So I was gonna be that was gonna be my 10 days.
That's
in
a
March.
bucket list thing, right?
Yeah,
And to get
both
that,
of
I guess,
them.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
Right.
And they both, and so I know I'll get booked there again. They have me at like the top of the list to get rebooked when they reopen, and my Masters passes.
Will they carry over?
They do carry over.
Will you get the special
okay.
November invitation, or is this
There's
gonna
no
be
fans
moved?
at the November.
Oh, they're
one.
not doing any of that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it'll be next year,
So-
then, right? Presumably. Okay.
So let me ask you this, and see if you'll go in on this
Okay.
with me. When you get booked back at the MGM,
I'm in.
Can we do a promo? I'm not asking for tickets.
I'm not
I want
asking
to
for tickets. I'll just go.
I want to do a promo photo of he and I painted up like white tigers on either side of you.
yes.
You want to do that?
Absolutely.
Can we do that?
Sure, I'd love nothing. I was thinking more maybe about going there. I'd,
Yeah.
I'd rather be painted
I
up
like
like a white
both
tiger.
of those things.
Right, yeah. So now I always get confused. Is the MGM Grand, is that the one? Because we went out there, I took my boys out there for Vegas Golden Knights. Is that the one right next to T-Mobile Arena?
It's across the street.
Right, okay. So Park
yeah,
MGM Grand. Okay.
Yeah, Park MGM is
gotcha.
across the street. So MGM Grand is It's one of the big ones.
Oh
It's
no,
where
absolutely, yeah.
Um,
That's all. Now, curiously, how do you get that? Like, what is that? What made you get to the point in your career where you're asked to do?
It was
that?
good.
Part of it was timing. So I had got booked to do a gig for Nissan at their national sales convention out there. And I had never worked. I worked at the Riviera once before
Okay.
they tore it down. And after my gig, I went over to the comedy club because a buddy of mine was headlining, who introduced me to the manager. She had just moved there from Chicago, which it was a club that I had played, and knew me from Chicago.
Okay.
So she was like, "Oh, you should come out here." So I messaged the lady who booked it, who's at the Ice House in Los Angeles, and she said, "Well, it's kind of a long list to get in. We have our favorites, blah blah blah." And a spot opened up. Wow. And so I took an opener's spot, and I said, "I'll take it, but this is the only time that I'm going to open, because I know that it's one of those places, if they see you as an opener, you'll
just
be
that.
an opener."
Yeah, okay.
So I said, "I'll come and make it like an audition." And I had a really good week, and at the end of the week they said, "We're going to give you a headline
good
week."
for you.
Yeah, that's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, how much do you have to essentially promote and market yourself?
I mean,
Is that
100%.
how, that's how you, that's, so when you look at a year, like when you're now looking at 2021,
Yeah.
are you mapping out your calendar and all the places that you want to try to, do comedy at, and you just reach out to those people? Is that how it works?
I mean, a lot of my schedule is booked at clubs like the Funny Bone,
Sure. Coming up in November. for
November,
instance.
yeah,
Right,
Friday,
right,
Saturday
yep.
after Thanksgiving, I'll be at the Funny Bone here. But that the people who own that club own Columbus, Omaha, Des Moines, Cleveland, Dayton,
So it's network.
Toledo.
So
if they book you at one, you're probably going to work most of
Gotcha.
them. I'm lucky that with Cincy Shirts and then the consulting work I do for Airheads and Mentos, that I don't have to do comedy, which is great, because 22 years in, like, I still want it to be fun. I still want to look forward to doing it, and having little kids and a family. I don't want to be on the road all the time like I used to be. Like my first year doing stand-up, I was gone 50 out of 52 weeks, but I was 24 and single, know?
Easier
that's what
to
you
do
wanted
that,
to be
right.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I take summers off. I'll do like 2 gigs a month. And so when I narrow it down to doing that few gigs a year, I can be selective, but it's not super hard to fill them because there's not a ton to fill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So usually the rest will get filled with a corporate show or a private event or something like
But
that.
this past week, bringing it closer to home, it was just, when you told me that, my heart broke for you.
Yeah.
And are you allowed to talk about who it was going to be?
Yeah, nobody cares at this point. So Dave Chappelle, for those who haven't heard, started doing something really cool up in Yellow Springs, right outside of Dayton, where he lives. He called it Chappelle's Summer Camp. And so all summer he's been doing these shows. Not only is it cool because it's Dave Chappelle, but it's like there's no other comedy shows going on in the world. So to
Right.
go to any show, people are dying to see comedy live. To see Dave Chappelle, people are dying to see. He's the MC.
Yeah,
he's bringing in giant comedic names. So the first night I went, it was Jon Stewart was there, and then the second night I went, it was Bill Burr and Brian Regan, who are 2 of my all-time favorites. Them and Chappelle are 3 of my top 4. They're 3 of the faces on my Mount Rushmore of comedy, and I got to see all of them in one show.
That's crazy.
It's just, and it's a small field next to a dairy farm in
It's
Dayton.
like 200 people capped.
200 people.
Yeah.
No cell phones. They lock it up
Take
in a
them when you
bag,
come, yep.
which is great because they don't want you to record it, but they also present it as, put it down, experience this, have a moment. And I think there's some real truth to that, because you're not looking at your phone, and you do, especially when you're listening to comedy outdoors.
But my understanding too is that he's had, Letterman obviously, but like John Mayer came out and did some stuff, and Bradley Cooper, non-comedians were coming out. It was just like his ultimate house party or his ultimate friends list.
Hootie.
And they all, Darius Rucker came out and did some stuff. And I know some people, because we were at Fig Leaf this past Saturday, and some people were bummed out because they had tickets. And but the show that you were going to do, and I'm sorry to keep coming back to this.
No. It was going to be Chris Rock, Louis C.K., Chris Tucker, Bob Saget, and then Snoop Dogg was just up there hanging out.
Oh, that's it.
I got a stitch.
But he's had Kevin
Yeah.
Hart there, you know. He's had like giant names, and one of the guys that moved there for the summer and has been staying there is an old friend of mine from Houston, named Mo Amer, who's got a Netflix special. So when I went up the first time, it was through a contact that I had of like, hey, can you get us a couple tickets? And I was just going as a fan. And then my friend Mo comes out, who I haven't seen in probably 7 or 8 years, and my phone is locked in a bag. I can't let him know that I'm there, you know?
Oh, that's right.
And so I contact him the next day, and he's like, I was just about to reach out to you because I was hoping to have some T-shirts made to sell up here. So we've been doing all his merch
Good segue,
and
yes.
then driving it up there and seeing the show while we're up there and hanging out. So it's been pretty incredible that just in a year like this to have moments of like normalcy, but also like that would be cool any year.
Just knowing you're in that circle, though, has got to be
That's
kind of
gotta be
cool,
cool.
too. I mean, that's huge.
Comedian Josh Sneed is our special house guest this evening. We do this each and every Wednesday. Well, we don't do it on Wednesday, but we air it on Wednesday, so I hope you're enjoying it. And he does more than just comedy. He's also the proprietor of Cincinnati Shirts. Yeah. How did you get into that? Cincy, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Shirts,
They'll find it.
A couple different locations, right?
Yep, Hyde Park, over the Rhine.
Yep.
So,
which has been restored, correct?
They both have been restored and are open. In 2005, so one of the things when I started doing stand-up, very quickly opening for some of these like comedians that are late 60s, you know, that's all they've known is stand-up. They're taking whatever gigs they can because they don't know anything else, you know. Divorced, like don't know their kids, you know, and it just I got the impression early of like if I really want to put everything I need to put into a family life one day, I need to have something else, because if I'm just on the road 50
you don't
weeks
want to
a
become
year,
that.
Yeah.
I mean, so
my buddy and I started this T-shirt company, and it was all funny T-shirts. That's all we did was like movie quotes and stuff like that. And he did the designs, and then I would go out on the road. I'd go on radio stations, you know, with guys like you, and I'd have on like a Randy Watson shirt, you know?
Yeah.
And people would be like, oh, Sexual Chocolate, like, where'd you get that shirt? And I'd be like, oh, we made this. It's for my, oh, it's funny you should ask. Here's a card. Here's the website. And so that's how we got started. And honestly, the goal was that down the road, it would be successful enough that I wouldn't have to be on the road all the time. And luckily that ended up being the case. And so we've evolved from we've got our funny T-shirt site. We have Cincy Shirts, which quickly became our biggest brand once we launched that. And it was funny because when that came out, I noticed that people would look at our funny T-shirt site and they'd say, these are funny, but I like that one. But if you showed Cincy Shirts to someone born and raised here, they're like, I want every single one of these.
Well, that's what I noticed is, and what the company was, when I first met you, it was called, what was it called?
Look at Me Shirts.
Look at Me
was
Shirts.
The original
because
brand.
I even signed up to have my own account where I could design my own shirt.
Yeah.
And I think how many did I design overall? None over all those years. But you could make your own design, and that was very cool. He and Darren, I met down in Dayton,
Kentucky. That's right.
Down there, I remember going down there, and you're like, yeah, we went upstairs. Like, we're going to do all this and this and this. And then the next thing you know, I see all these ones. And this was very smart because you did the thing. Cincinnati doesn't, there's two things Cincinnati loves. Cincinnati and 1984. You know what I mean? So if you can get people in Cincinnati to see a funny take on their neighborhood name or whatever, that stuff, you got them. I mean, you set the hook.
Well, even from the beginning, we would have like a Cincinnati section, because the first shirt that ever got us press was Even God Hates the Steelers. That was the first shirt that ever got us in the paper. I was going to say, man,
you're that's...
I'll come back.
I know he is. I know he is.
But you're probably right.
But the one thing that I loved, and I always loved growing up here, was like, and it's such a weird example, but do you remember Mama's Cookies? They were a sponsor of the Uncle Al show, but
I do.
They had different color packaging, and I love the logo. And there were so many of those, like the bars that I went to in college, you know, Caddies and Sleep Out Louie's and Hurricane Surf Club.
But think about all those. That, Swallens and all about
there's so
sports.
many colors. Yeah. All those logos have like 8 colors. And at the time, we were screen printing and just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But in the back of our mind, we always wanted to have like a Cincinnati website of these like cool old vintage logos. And we finally had the equipment to print digitally where we could do full color. And I was like, we need to have our Cincy site now. And so we had like Americana and Fantasy Farm and like all these stuff. And people would see it and they'd start telling stories like my dad worked at Swallens, or I remember
That's
going to
Cincinnati.
service
Yep.
merchandise,
Yeah.
So that was how Cincy Shirts came around, and then it took off, and then we thought, man, we should try this for other cities. So we launched Old School Shirts, which is like basically Cincy Shirts, but other markets. And now we have In the Clutch, which is our sports stuff, because we have a MLB license and an MLS license.
Yeah.
So
for
all
FC,
sports stuff is on there, and it's cool to work with some of these MLB players.
And soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he just
I think I
said,
winked
little
with the wrong
something.
eye. You couldn't see it on camera.
he just prompted his two things he mentioned prompted two quick stories for me. He mentioned the Uncle Al show. I once was on that and peed myself.
You peed yourself?
I peed myself.
You're
on
not
the
the
Uncle
only one
Al.
that's
I was in the
that
last.
story.
Remember they had the little risers. I was in the last row, and it was a real issue. I couldn't wait, man. The uncle and Captain Wendy. I had to go.
What was
You
the
couldn't- you got
clown's
down to
name?
do that
Cookie?
dance, drying yourself off.
Was it Cookie?
Who was
Clown?
Maybe the clown scared me. I don't know, but I just.
That's probably why you peed your pants.
But you mentioned service merchandise, one of the greatest. Do you remember those stores?
Oh yeah.
So you remember
they
when
rolled everything out on the.
Well, they rolled everything on a
rollers.
conveyor belt, and you would give them your name, and then you would go pick it. This is how dumb one of the employees was one time. I heard somebody go, I went up, and I said, Gamble, like Procter & Gamble, trying to make sure, because,
Sure.
Gamble, Campbell, whatever. It's about 5 minutes later. Procter & Gamble? You dumbass. I'm just
That narrows it
comparing.
down in
Right.
this town.
James Gamble.
There you go. See, there's something else at Cincinnati, but that's cool. I mean, it's really. Did you think that you would ever have this kind of success this quick doing that?
Well, I mean, that's what's crazy. I mean, it's been 15
Yeah,
years.
it's not.
you
I
know,
would say it's a 15-year
I'll
overnight
tell you why it
success.
worked.
Strong though, right?
I'll tell you why it worked was because a lot of times, and we've seen this, when people start a business, they need it to be successful right away. Or they have to bail on it. And the dynamic for us was that Darren, my partner, was going to handle kind of the day-to-day stuff, and then I would handle the on-the-road marketing. But I had my comedy money. So I told him from the beginning, I said, you make sure you get paid for your daily work, and then whatever's left over after that, we'll split. And what that allowed us to do was just let the company grow because both of us weren't relying on those 2 or 3 sales a day.
Right. When you do that, and when you have to make something just to survive, it's a tough road to hoe.
Yeah.
Any kind of business.
Yeah.
It really is.
Sounds very familiar as to our situation here. We have. I'm
man.
not really good at math, but I'm fairly certain that a zero denominator is pretty easy to do the math.
Yeah.
on.
Well, hey, you know what? At least taxes are easy, right? We don't have much trouble.
But you're
No,
bringing-
we're both taxed more than we'd like to
right.
admit.
Right.
I know you're being sarcastic, but you guys, I mean, people love you guys, and you need to hear that too,
we'll
because
see.
there's a reason why you're able to do this show from your house because people
You have a
love you
house.
guys.
That's true.
Right.
Because
Well,
you're
I
able to
still
have a
do. I
house.
still have a roof over my head.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to be living in their basement soon, but we're doing
It's
great.
okay. I got room down
all
there
good.
for you. It's all good. There's a workout room down there for you. We got all kinds
Oh yeah,
of things.
because
Can I
clearly
play
that's
video
what-
games down
Right,
there?
That's what I need.
No video games allowed.
all right,
For,
I'm
no.
out.
So he's
No.
out. Well, I will say the one shirt, and I think I've told you this 10 times, but the one shirt that I will never, ever forget that I thought, wow, these guys, because so much of what you do is very topical. Like with the Fiona stuff and all this, like within an hour or 2 hours, this shirt is turning and burning and ready to sell on a limited basis, many times for charity. So kudos for that. But I'll never forget the one that I thought there was something different about these guys. It was a stormtrooper sitting in an easy chair with his head in his hands, and it just said, I had friends on that Death Star.
Yeah.
And I would just laugh my balls off forever. I still laugh
still
when
funny.
I think about
It
it.
is still funny.
And I just thought, God, there's something different going on there. And that made me, was that Darren's design? Or
Darren did the design. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
my idea, and then
That's a
he was
great-
so good. I mean, he still is. We have luckily people, you know,
Sure.
more designers now, but at the time it was just me and Darren.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
literally
remember.
from 2005 till we opened our first store down in Over the Rhine in 2014, it was Darren and I.
Well, Lori's bought a couple recently, right? A couple of the, be better to each other.
Yeah.
Which,
Thank
because,
you.
I live that every day.
I'm not,
there was
no
another
offense, but
one
I'm not
too,
buying
right?
now. I'm not buying
He's
that
wearing
one.
it ironically.
I just, I think
I want you to do one.
I might have even said, "What the hell are you doing wearing that?"
I want you to do one because I grew up in Louisville, a very similar city to here,
here we go.
where the West Side. You know, when you're there, that's where you are, and that's so. I think you need to do one here for Cincinnati, the West Side, just with my parents' house, and on the back, it's like that same house with your house right next door.
Yeah,
something like that.
Oh,
There's
that's
gotta be a way.
that's totally West
Gotta
Side.
be a
Yeah.
way to pull that off. Anyway, well, we got just a couple more minutes, but I want to make sure too, because tied into Cincy Shirts is your podcast. Are you guys still? Because you've got how many hundreds of guests now that you've done?
Yeah, we're like 150 or something.
Wow.
like
Yeah,
that,
you're closing
I
in
think.
on 2. I thought.
Yeah. It's been incredible, you know, because I mean, you guys are both kind enough to do it, and it's fun because. Especially when it comes to local media, because so often local media, whether it's radio or TV, you're squeezed in. Like, we're going to hit a hard break and we got to wrap this up. You know what I mean? And you don't ever get to know the guys. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're answering the
personalities
questions.
of the personalities.
People want to know where you guys came from and stuff like that, or stories that you can't tell on the air because they're too long. Or
you're just our 4th guest. We've had Catherine Nero, Lance McAllister, Andy Furman, and now you. I mean, so those are people that like. Yeah, I'm sorry.
One of these things is not the other.
You're top 5. It's all good.
And you're the tallest.
But I mean, Catherine talking about how they unceremoniously ousted her in the morning show, and Lance how he's done it for 20 plus
Furman
years.
got booted for being Furman.
Right, for being Furman, doing what he was told to do. So, but you've had a lot of you've had a mix of guests too.
We've had, and we did, and that's on purpose. You know, I mean, we've had. You know, Johnny Bench and Bronson Arroyo and people like that. Thane Maynard was our first guest, but you know, we've also had like just people who have cool businesses, like the guy who founded Gorilla Glue, and you know, the Gleer family to come talk about the history again. I mean, and you know, for an hour, like it's really fascinating to see the history behind some of these like iconic brands or businesses or just names you've heard of, but you're not quite sure why you know them. And you know, it's really resonated with people. There's a guy who does haunted tours around Cincinnati, and he came in to talk about all the different haunted spots and why they're haunted. And
it's cool.
You know,
a lot of different
It's
subjects.
been really fun for me, even as somebody that lives here, and you think you know every part of town. You think you know the history, and you learn something.
Well, and that's the whole point. And it's very conversational, very easy to do. It's just like you're sitting around bullshit and just kind of like this has been. And because we're ironically kind of up against it right now, I want to make sure, let people know how to get a hold of you via the podcast and via your social media and everywhere that you'd like them to be able to find you.
So Cincy Shirts is, you know, I always just say Google, because you don't have to look on any specific platform. If you want to find us, you'll find us. So Cincy Shirts, our podcast or the website or either of our stores, come in, look around. And then I'm just Josh Sneed on all the social media, and I got the shows coming up at the Funny Bone in November. It's Thanksgiving weekend, so come out and see those. And yeah.
And remember, when you get that call again from Vegas, we're the Tigers, and we need to go.
Dude, please come.
We'll be there.
Hell yeah.
Please
Dude,
come.
We'll come out.
Play some golf. I know you like it out there.
Yeah.
Last time I was on your guys' show, you were coming home from the airport that night.
You're correct.
That's
I had
right.
to call
You went to the
in.
hockey
Yeah,
game.
I do like it
Yeah.
out there. Sometimes
right.
it doesn't like me, but I thoroughly enjoy it out there. It's a lot. No, it's one of those, and you don't even have to gamble.
You don't.
You don't. There's so much to do out there. The food's outstanding.
It's
a
way
cool-
more.
it's a
way
cool
more
place to go.
vacation-esque than
It
it
is.
is degenerate.
Yeah.
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 But there's that
Until
too.
we get
There is
right?
that too.
Until we get out
Right.
there, right?
Right.
All right. Well, good stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
from top to bottom, I think
Absolutely.
we covered your entire oeuvre, if you will. Josh Sneed, good friend of ours, good
Yep.
friend of the program, and a good friend of yours, whether you even knew it or not. But now you do. Later on this evening, he and I are going to be squaring off late night in a furious online game of Pong.
I think it would be awesome if you got under
let's do
an
it.
alias and just started firing questions. That'd
Do
be
it.
outstanding, wouldn't it?
Oh, what are you wearing right now? You know, things like that.
Well, I'm on camera, but
what are you wearing? What can't
What do I
see?
need? An OnlyFans site now for you?
Yeah,
Is that
right.
what-
There you go.
Exactly. I'm going to control him for 45 seconds. There's some tokens. I don't know what made me say that. Anyway,
Guys,
all
thank
right.
you for having
Thanks,
me.
man.
That's great
Appreciate
having
it.
you here. That's
Yep,
what it's all
absolutely.
about. The house guests, a chance for you to get to know folks whose names you've heard or faces you've seen and maybe didn't put it all together. Not unlike ours, because we're still getting out there and getting a chance to meet you as well. So thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Yep,
guys.
Absolutely.
So Thursday night, assuming that the Reds don't get
It,
scheduled.
it depends on, they haven't announced the time. So depending on the time, if they don't play a night game, we'll be on. If
Okay,
they do, we probably
WLW
won't
9
be.
to midnight
Yes,
for the reality
correct.
check. Otherwise, we'll be back here on Monday night for the next episode of Larger Than Live. This has been the House Guest Edition with special hashtag House Guest, hashtag Josh Sneed, and we'll see you next time.